Mr. Kirby, thank you very much for this interview. We're going to start with Iraq. The White House issued a readout of a phone call between President Biden and the Iraqi Prime Minister, Mr. Mustafa al-Kadhimi. And he said that the United States is offering full support to de-escalate in the region. In what way can the United States support to de-escalate in Iraq, considering they have no leverage over the militias there?
I would dispute the notion that we have no leverage over the militias. You've seen us take quite swift and steady action against militia groups as they have presented a threat to our people, to our facilities, as well as to our Iraqi partners. And we're going to continue to do what we have to do to defend ourselves and our Iraqi partners. Number two, we're still assisting the Iraqi security forces with improving their capabilities. And thanks to the government of Iraq, we're able to continue that mission. It's an advise and assist mission only, clearly, but it's still important to help improve their competency and their capability in the battlefield. So I reject the notion that we have no leverage or no ability to assist Iraq in pushing back against these militias. We're doing it every single day.
But most of the militias, as you very well know, are supported by Iran. So now we had two blocks, which is the pro-Iran militias and the Sadrists. So would you say that Iran called the shot in the end, that they have the final say in the matter?
I think Iran would like to say that they are calling the shots. I think Iran would like to believe that they have the final say. The final say inside Iraq belongs to the Iraqi people. It belongs to the Iraqi government. And the leaders that the Iraqi people put in office, they have the final say. And we respect those democratic institutions. We respect Iraqi sovereignty, and we call on Iran to respect Iraqi sovereignty. In the meantime, we're going to do what we have to do to continue to support our Iraqi partners, as well as support and defend our national security interests in the region. And we're doing that. Whether or not we get back into the JCPOA, the Iran deal, and I know that's a separate discussion, regardless, we're going to make sure that we have the capabilities in the region, economically, militarily, to continue to push back on Iran's malign activities throughout the Middle East.
Well, actually, I want to link that to what you just said. We have seen an increased response from the U.S. against these militias in northern Syria a couple of times. Would you say that's because the United States, maybe under a new general in Central Command, are taking a tougher position vis-a-vis the militias, or Iran trying to provoke the U.S. into some kind of confrontation?
I think what you've seen with these recent strikes is a continuation of President Biden's decision that, with or without a deal, we're going to answer and defend our national security interests, that we are not going to look the other way with Iran's other malign activities. I think we can all agree that no problem in the Middle East gets easier to solve with a nuclear-armed Iran. But think about how much more difficult those problems are going to be if Iran has a nuclear weapon. And so we've got to make sure that, with or without a deal, we can answer Iran's aggressiveness. And we're going to do that. We can do that economically through sanctions, which still stay in place. And we can do that sort of militarily in terms of defending our people and our facilities. And we're going to do that. So I think what you're seeing is very much a continuation of President Biden's policy from the very get-go, that we're going to maintain a tough, strong deterrent posture against these malign activities by Iran.
But you know, people in the region, countries that support the United States, will say that the problem with American foreign policy is always short-sighted. In other words, you wanted to secure this deal, but you separate it, as you just said, from Iran malign activities, from its ballistic missile program, etc. Why can't you link these things together? Because they are coherent strategy.
That's not short-sighted. That's pragmatism. That's the essence of this particular negotiation. Because you know what happens? If you try to throw in every other thing that you have a problem with Iran on, there's not going to be a deal. They're never going to get there. They'll get there, we may get there, but it's going to have to be focused on the nuclear problem. And again, I say, no problem in the Middle East gets easier to solve if they have a nuclear weapon. But if they do, every other problem gets 10 times more difficult. So we believe back in 2015, and we believe now, that if you can eliminate the nuclear weapon threat, if you can negotiate that out of the picture, then you still have plenty of tools available to you to deal with the other malign activities. And the president, again, you noted earlier in the strikes that we've recently taken in Syria, the president has made no bones about the fact that he's willing to use our capabilities to defend our interests and our people if need be. Now, we obviously would prefer that that doesn't have to be the case. And Iran has some decisions that they have to make, not just with respect to the deal on the table, but with what kind of future they want to see for themselves going forward in the region. They are the ones supporting terrorist networks. They're the ones that are threatening maritime traffic. They're the ones who are contributing to destabilization on the political forefront inside the Middle East. And they can make some decisions on their own to stop doing those kinds of things. And then they wouldn't face the kind of pressure that they're going to get from the United States and from other countries economically and militarily.
Are they getting bolder? Like in the last few days, we have seen in the Arabian Gulf, actually, they're trying to seize an unmanned U.S. vessel. So does that mean they're trying to provoke the U.S. like we have seen it in the past? Do they detect weakness, or did they just wanted to, I don't know, why are they trying to provoke the U.S.? Are they trying to get access to these unmanned vessels because they want to know how it works, or what exactly behind it?
I mean, ever since the previous administration pulled out of the Iran deal, which was a tragic, tragic mistake, we have seen Iran grow bolder. By orders of magnitude, their attacks, their support for terrorists in the region have increased under the so-called maximum pressure campaign that the previous administration put in place, which did nothing of the sort. As a matter of fact, when we were in the deal and Iran was compliant, their breakout time towards a weapon advanced to more than a year. Now, we're a matter of weeks away because of this so-called maximum pressure. And so what we've been trying to do over the last 16, 17 months in terms of getting back into the deal is to push that breakout time out and to make sure that we are militarily capable and ready to deal with the other threats that Iran poses. But we have seen them feel emboldened, not because of anything the Biden administration has done in terms of trying to get back in the deal, but because of the so-called maximum pressure. It had the exact opposite effect that the previous administration thought that it would.
Talking about the deal, I know we asked you this before, but you are waiting basically for the Iranian response. They send it to you, you looked at it, you send it back to them via the European envoys. But now, what is this a deadline? Is this like a time frame? Will you say, okay, how long will it take the Iranians to come back with this, since time is of the essence?
Yeah, the EU is also evaluating our response. I won't get so specific as putting a date on the calendar here. We are giving them sufficient time to take a look at our response and see where they are.
But what is sufficient time? Is it weeks or
again,
months?
I don't think it suits anybody to be too specific right now. We believe that a lot of good work has gone into the negotiations. And we also believe that we're closer now than we were even 2 weeks ago because Iran was willing to drop some unrelated demands that they had with respect to these negotiations. And again, we've been very focused on one thing, and that's the nuclear weapons capability. So it was good that they dropped these unrelated demands. So we'll see what they come back with. The president has said, we want to get a deal, we want to do this diplomatically, but we're not going to stay at it forever. So we hope that they'll act swiftly and we'll be able to move this thing forward. But it'd be difficult for me to predict exactly what that looks like on the calendar.
I mean, if we talk about the mechanism, I mean, once they look at the proposal, do we expect like going back to negotiate, or is this like the final stage where you say, okay, that's it,
Yeah.
They agreed, we sign, we go back to Vienna and we declare that we have whatever, 120 days to start implementing it?
Yeah, I don't want to negotiate in public. We've responded. They're looking at our response. Let's see what they come back with.
Just for us to understand if it's whether we go back to negotiation or not.
I think it's going to depend on their response to our response, and then we'll see where we are at that point.
And finally, again, you say that Iran with nuclear weapon is more dangerous than without in terms of
No doubt.
security in the region.
No doubt.
Some people say that Iran getting $100 billion, it's a huge amount of money. It's not going to be investing in infrastructure in Iran. It's going to go to the proxies. It's going to support Hezbollahs and the Houthis and the Iraqi militias. So is this any way, do you have a say to say to the Iranians, here's your money, but we want to make sure that you're not going to use it against us, which is basically destabilization of the region?
Sanctions relief are a part of the deal. They were in 2015, 2016, and they are now.
So it was badly negotiated in 2015?
Not at all. Not at all. Sanctions relief are a part of this deal in return for not allowing Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Now, if Iran chooses to use that money to propagate their support to terrorists, if Iran chooses to use that money to continue to make the region less secure, then the United States and our allies and partners have available to us avenues to address that, and we'll do that. You've seen some of that just in the last couple of weeks with the president being willing to issue orders for military action. We have the capability to deal with those activities should that be the way in which Iran chooses to use that money. Now, we would urge Iran, of course, not to do that, and they certainly have enough domestic economic issues at home that money would be better suited for. But if they choose to continue these malign activities, the United States will continue, as we have in the past, to deal with those activities with a range of vehicles, to include existing and maybe even additional unilateral sanctions on those activities.
Is this a military option? Is there a military option?
The president has been very clear. He wants to see the issue of Iran's nuclear program dealt with diplomatically. But he has also been clear that we need to be prepared for all eventualities. And I think I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, but I just want to follow up on this because in principle, the president and the Pentagon or the establishment has to give the president a military option principally, regardless, for any situation. But now we have seen a protest from the Israelis. The head of the Mossad is coming. The National Security Advisor was here.
Yeah.
He's meeting with CENTCOM. The Israelis are obviously thinking of and leaking some information that there is a plan B and there is a military option. So is this something the United States willing to allow the Israelis to do?
The president has been crystal clear. Iran will not be allowed to achieve nuclear weapons capability. He prefers to achieve that outcome through diplomacy. But the basis of the statement remains clear and consistent. They will not be allowed to achieve a nuclear weapons capability.
On this note, thank you very much for this interview.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.
Thank you.